All right, good evening. I'd like to call the regular school committee meeting to order, today being Tuesday, December 20th, 2016. We're at the Peabody School. Today's meeting is being recorded by the Peabody School Committee's recording secretary, Leanna Harris. The matters listed on our agenda are those reasonably anticipated by the chair, which may be discussed at the meeting. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. I'd like to start, if everybody could please stand for a moment of silence, and then we'll go right into the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Approval of minutes of the December 13, 2016 regular school committee meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Heard the motion by Mr. Rosignol for approval of those minutes, seconded by Mrs. Carpenter. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Rosenthal?
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mrs. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Olympio?
Yes.
Mr. Amico?
Yes.
Thank you. We have approval of bills. Mrs. Carpenter?
I'd like to make a motion to approve warrant A, number 3284, the amount of $247,160.17, subject to audit.
Second.
Thank you for the motion for approval of warrant A, number 3284, by Mrs. Carpenter, seconded by Mr. Rosignol. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Rosenthal?
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mrs. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Olympio?
Yes.
Mr. Amico?
Yes.
Great, just check in on continued business. Any updates, Mrs. Dunn,
Oh,
on MSBA Higgins project?
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, the subcommittee met on Thursday of last week, and we are making good progress on the punch list. We are making sure of the completion, and they have good results on the back punch list, which means when they have a list, when they note an item and force it to be repaired, they go back and make sure it's repaired. That's the back punch. We also discussed the placement of the tile on the heavily used corridors. The lights at the front of the building are still in progress, and when they are placed, then we'll make a determination as to whether that is enough light on the front of the building or if the additional lights need to be placed in there. They are still working on the heating system. It's something that's very, very precise. So they're isolating areas where they may be having some trouble. And last Friday was, as everyone knows, such a cold day, and the plan that day was to leave the system as it had been designed. Other schools were being kept warm overnight so that everyone could come into the building already warmed up. Because of the Higgins systems, they decided to just run it as is to see how it operated under such cold conditions, and it did work well. But they are still having some problems. We're still under warranty, and they're constantly on this. It's a really, really big thing that they're working on. Let's see, they're putting in the signs at the front of the building and some interior signs. And then there was a discussion about the warranties versus the punch list, and what they do is they look at an item, whether it belongs on the punch list, whether it's a warranty item, or whether it may just be an item that's come up due to wear and tear on the building because it is used by so many people. So they have 3 lists going on, and they have to track those to make sure that they're being dealt with appropriately. Let's see. And site work is continuing, and they are looking into the sunlight that is coming into the building right now. The building was designed to utilize sunlight. It was a little too much the other day, and it was interesting to find out why. It's because that is the time of year when the sun is at its lowest point. So people needed sunglasses in some of those locations, and it was an interesting discussion about that. You wouldn't think about it in the winter, but they're looking into different ways to deal with that.
It's been an issue in the gymnasium also,
Yeah.
for some of the basketball games and the early morning games, the 8 o'clock games in particular. It's been an issue. And I think it might be something that we have to discuss either some sort of shades or drapes or something.
Yeah, they
It's
were
been a
gonna chart
problem.
it. Actually, what was so interesting was that they explained that it was good that people mentioned it, because they need to chart it to figure out the best way to deal with it. And it's affecting, of course, the cafeteria and the office. The sunlight comes right into the office too, all the way into the middle of the building. So, it was a really timely thing to discuss, and it really was kind of interesting to hear about it, because, you wouldn't think of having a problem wearing sunglasses in school in December, but that occurred. So that's all I have. Our next meeting will be the third Thursday of the month at Higgins at 4. Again, it's an open meeting. And the discussions at that point will be revolving around the athletic fields, the construction of those. That is ongoing. It's moving very well. Everything's according to schedule, so.
Great, thank you, Mrs. Dunn. For kids only, before school, after school, any updates on that?
Just, we have a meeting scheduled on Friday.
Thank you. Superintendent search. I'm sorry, on the earlier one? Or-
Yep.
Oh, sorry, Mr.
on board.
Rosignol?
Yeah, could we just have enrollment figures from September, after your meeting, from September, and then what they are currently, just so we get an idea of figures?
Great. Thank you. Superintendent search, nothing new to report on that besides the fact that the ad is told up and running. I haven't seen it yet, but I've been told it's up.
It
You've
is.
seen it?
We're
Okay,
up the next day.
great. I thought so, but I hadn't seen it. I was told that. Public participation, is anyone in the audience that would like to speak on the topic? Their opportunity now. Superintendent's report, Dr. Levine.
Just a communication from the Higgins, from DESE, that the Higgins Middle School has been chosen for the state survey on youth health. This survey has been around for many, many years. It's chosen schools are chosen randomly to participate, and we will get it's totally anonymous, but we will get figures regarding the results of the survey, not only so that we can compare to our own from previous years, but also to the rest of the state. So just so you know that will be given sometime this spring.
Yes, Mr. Rosio.
Through the chair, when was the last survey that was done by the Higgins Middle School? Do you
That
know?
I don't know, but I can find that out for you.
All right, that'd be good. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Miko.
Chair, Dr. Levine, could we just make sure that we get parent notification or a letter out to parents or communication on that?
Absolutely.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Dunn?
I know this is probably a question we ask each time, but do they still continue to just make, amalgamate all of those results and not to single out specific schools with the answers and things like that?
That is correct.
Okay.
We may get specifically results on the Higgins, but nobody else sees those, and it is amalgamated throughout the state.
And just for the new members, it's because there's always been a concern about, some of the questions are really very, very deep for some of the kids, and because when they do tend to single schools out, sometimes the newspapers utilize those statistics for the wrong reasons. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. We received a $50 donation from Ludazat Environmental. I would ask you to accept that.
Motion to accept with gratitude and send notification to the donor.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mrs. Dunn. All in favor?
And we just received a letter of thanks from Joanne Anderson from the Peabody Senior Center. Football players and cheerleaders went down and entertained, and part of community service and part of just being good kids. And we have so many good kids throughout the district. So I wanted to bring that to your attention and thank the kids and their coaches for being such good sports. That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you. Written communication, I think that was left over from last meeting. And subcommittee reports, real quickly, education, any update, Mr. Hockman?
Nothing to report.
Finance, Mrs. Carpenter?
We met this evening with AFSCME and we are continuing negotiations with them.
Good, thank you. School safety,
Nothing to report.
athletics and wellness, Mr.
Nothing to
Rosignol?
report at this time.
Thank you. Quality and standards, Mrs. Dunn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quality Standards Subcommittee met prior to this meeting this evening, and on our agenda was naming of one of the pieces of facility, and that was the naming of athletic fields at the Higgins. And Mayor Bettencourt brought forward the request to have those fields named in honor of firefighter Jim Rice. And that motion was made by Mr. Miko. We are reporting that out favorably, that the Quality Standards Subcommittee does support that recommendation, and I'm going to turn it over to the mayor for further remarks.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. Certainly now with the construction of the middle school being near completion, gives us the opportunity to discuss potentially naming different parts of the school after people who contributed greatly to the city, greatly to our educational system, contributed in many different ways. And I know that's a discussion we're going to have at a later date, something we should probably have relatively soon. But one thing that I've always had in mind, and we've looked at other opportunities as a city, but this is something that I thought would be a wonderful tribute to a man who left a lasting legacy in our city. A family man, a coach, an athlete, a student of the Higgins Middle School, and a firefighter who lost his life tragically in a fire 5 years ago Friday. And we have scheduled on Friday a mass at 12 o'clock. Following the mass, there'll be a collation, a remembrance at City Hall at 1 o'clock. And I thought it'd be a wonderful opportunity to acknowledge his legacy and really pay tribute to a wonderful person who's, I know, deeply missed in the city. And we will have his family, his friends, the fire department, and just people who respected and loved Jim Rice. And I wanted to make that announcement Friday at City Hall. And I was hopeful that there would be a positive vote from the school committee in order to do that. I think we'll work out the details as to the name. That'll be something I think has to be worked out with the family. I did speak with Amy Rice, Jim's wife, and she was thrilled and very touched by the gesture from us. So wanted to ask for the vote. I explained certainly my thoughts to Beverly and to Joe in the committee, just as I have today, and I think it will be a wonderful tribute to Mr. Rice, and something that I think, again, will really honor his legacy. I know Mr. Rosignol was friendly to him. I didn't know if he would be the one that would like to make the motion. I think everybody knew Jim a little bit, but I know you were friends with him.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would actually be honored to make that as a motion to name the Higgins Field after Jim Rice. Jim is a Peabody guy. He's somebody that I had the opportunity to hang out with, enjoy his company, be friends with for a number of years. And it would be absolutely my pleasure to make that as a motion to name the Higgins Fields after Mr. Jim Rice.
Second.
Great. Heard the motion by Mr. Rosignol, seconded by Mrs. Dunn. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Rosenwell?
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mrs. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Olympio?
Yes.
Mr. Amico?
Yes.
So we have on Friday, the mass is at 12 St. John's, right behind City Hall. Following the mass, everybody's going to come over to the Wigan Auditorium for a ceremony, for a collation, and just a remembrance of Jim. And at that time, I'd love to have anybody who's able to come that day join me in announcing this, and I think it will be wonderful. Great.
And Mrs. Rice knows, but I'm not going to make any type of an announcement. Let them handle that on
Yeah,
Friday after the ceremony.
Yep, we're going to, I haven't spoken to anybody about this besides a couple people, and so I think we'll be wonderfully received that day. So, okay, anything else to report, Mrs. Dunn?
No, but a reminder, at the end of our subcommittee meetings, subcommittee reports, Dr. Levine has a letter in here with some really good news about our community high school. So you
yes.
want to speak about that.
Yeah. I'll just finish the subcommittee
Yeah.
reports real quickly. City Council Advisory Board Liaison, anything, Mrs. Dunn?
Oh, yes, sorry. The Parent Advisory Board met last night at Higgins. well-attended meeting, and at that meeting, we discussed several different items concerning specific schools, which I'll bring to Dr. Levine's attention. Several items of concern at the Higgins about different things that may end up being added to the punch list or to the sunshine list, whatever.
Besides the Rosignol tiles on the hallway?
Yes. And actually, it points out, we've encouraged people, you know, if you notice something at the school, to let us know so that we can check to make sure it's on the punch list. So I was glad the parents brought these forward. And then we brought forth to the parents to get their input into the superintendent's search. So Mr. Miko and Mr. Olympio and I explained the process to the parents going forward, and then actually already tasked them with one thing. Put out there and asked them whether they thought that the parents would be, prefer focus group meetings or surveys. And they actually thought a mixture of both, but that the survey would get the best response. And we told them that is something that MASC was going to work on for us, as far as asking for input from the public about what they're looking for in the next superintendent. So it was a very good meeting, and the parents are very willing to help in any way. They're going to take that information back to their schools and try to get some more information and input for us. So, but I did think it was interesting, the points they brought up about a survey and about wanting to actually be able to meet candidates and to submit questions if possible, you know, to the candidates. So it was a wide-ranging conversation, very well spoken people there. And our next meeting will be the third Monday of January, and we have to check on location.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn.
Thank you.
Building and grounds, nothing at this time. Before we go to new business, Dr. Levine, did you
Just
want to?
very quickly, the State Department of Education puts programs like Community High School that we have at Peabody High School through a rigorous certification process. And we received a certificate and a letter stating that the Community High School at Peabody Veterans Memorial High School is now a fully certified program and recognized as so by the Department of Education. I give a lot of credit to the kids, a lot of credit to the staff, and a lot of credit to the new director up there, Craig Maccarelli, who's really done a tremendous job for us. So very pleased with that communication from the state, and very pleased for the kids up there. As you recall, this was at the middle school for quite some time, and we moved it back to the high school. I met with the, actually Kara and I met with the kids and the staff on a couple of occasions to assure them that the transition back to the high school would be smooth, that they would have their own area, that the issues that they had at the high school that brought them to the community high school in the first place would not be present, and indeed it's been a great year. So we're very pleased with the way this is all transitioned.
Great, thank you. Oh, Mr. Rosignol?
Just one question. I know right now our enrollment at the high school is low, and I think it's going to influx in about 2 years. Is that going to change the space where the alternative high school currently resides?
Not right now, through the chair. We don't have any plans to change that space now. It's a good space for them.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Mrs. Dunn?
I just wanted to say congratulations to everybody that went through that process, because I know it was very rigorous to originally get approval. When we first started, we were told we wouldn't get approval. So I'm glad that everyone that has worked on that has moved to this next stage. It's a very good program. It's really needed, and they did a very good job.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Last item is new business. Under new business, the one item is Oak Street project. Briefly, I'm going to talk a little bit about it, but I wanted Mr. Hockman to speak on it as well. He attended a recent hearing on this matter. But just in terms of background, a proposal was submitted by a developer, the Larkin Brothers, for the property at 40 Oak Avenue. That's the Elks property. Many people know that, the Elks property. And there's a purchase sale agreement that has been signed for the developer to purchase the property. And he's proposed to build 80 units of housing in a lot that's not much bigger than an acre. Has a history of flooding issues, and there are a number of concerns that the city has. Issue that we have as a community is right now we're a little below our 10% requirement for affordable housing in the city. We're somewhere around 9.5%. We're supposed to have 10% of affordable housing. Because we're not at our 10%, developers can submit 40B, Mass General Laws, Chapter 40B proposals that allow them to bypass and skirt around our zoning ordinances and planning board, zoning board of appeals, conservation issues, things of that nature. So they have submitted to the Mass Housing Department for approval of this project. We have the opportunity to respond as a city to state our concerns and to oppose the project, which we're moving forward with. I've asked city departments to put in writing their concerns. We're going to be submitting those letters to Mass Housing when they review the project. There was a hearing a short time ago. Mr. Hockman attended, and I asked Mr. Hockman, with assistance from Dr. Levine, to put into writing some of his concerns that he outlined at the meeting. Did an excellent job. And then I thought maybe the committee could discuss if we would like to submit that on behalf of the school committee. Pete McGinn, the city council president, is leading the charge. He's the ward councilor in that area, and he's been involved heavily in the project. And a lot of concerns in terms of access, in terms of drainage, in terms of flooding, whole number of issues. But certainly there's some school-related ones. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Hockman, who I thought did an excellent job, he and Dr. Levine, of putting everything into writing. Mr. Hockman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the letter that Dr. Levine and I crafted was sent out by email. It was a late submission night. We didn't have time to get it into the Friday agenda. But I hope that you've all had an opportunity to read it. I do have copies for anyone that we can go to this way, if we can go the rest around. And if Ms. Harris can take one for the record as well. So,
Motion received.
thank you.
Yeah, motion made by Mrs. Dunn, seconded by Mr. Olympio. All in favor?
So I'll start out with jumping in on what the mayor talked about in terms of this project. It's almost the entire parcel of this property is located within a flood zone. It's a property that floods significantly regularly. I think it was the fire department. One of the departments that was at the meeting, the public meeting, indicated that it flooded to the extent of 5 or 6 feet of standing water on a almost on an annual basis.
Mm-hmm.
And
Especially the back parcel.
yeah, so the proposal for this project has, like the mayor said, it's, I believe, a 4-story building with parking underneath the buildings, 80 residential units. A substantial amount of them are 2- and 3-bedroom units, and 8 separate townhouses that will all be 3-bedroom units. The experience that Dr. Levine actually, I think, showed us with housing units in our last agenda was that there are, with multiple bedroom units, the expectation is that there will be children residing there. With children residing there, if some of the children we would have to anticipate and expect would attend the Higgins Middle School and the Peabody Veterans Memorial High School, each of those buildings are far enough away from this project where busing would be permitted under our policies. And if busing were permitted for these kids, I have serious concerns about what occurs on a day in which it starts out with a normal school day, and then at 11 or 10 in the morning, heavy rains come and that area floods. And what do we do with these kids if we can't get them safely transported back to their residence? We certainly wouldn't be willing to put our school bus drivers in a position where they're gonna take a bus with children into a flooded property. So there are some serious concerns about that. There are some serious concerns with the current occupancy of the Welch Elementary School, which would be the organic elementary school for these kids. The Welch is presently the population of the Welch has presently grown significantly because of the free after-school care that FKO now provides. So the open enrollment that we historically saw where children would opt to go to other elementary schools with the permission of the superintendent, we haven't seen this year, and I don't expect to see much of in the future, because after-school care is available to Welch School students. I think a lot of the reasons that open enrollment was exercised by parents at that school was for care for their children after school while parents or guardians were working. So we have an overtaxed elementary school where we would potentially add a significant amount of additional children. In addition to that, the Welch happens to be our most economically disadvantaged school. It's the highest percentage of, or highest number of English as second language students. We have the need for second-tier intervention and specialists at that school that I, for one, don't want to compromise to allow for additional elementary school pupils to go there. Bottom line is we don't have the room. We don't have any classrooms available. And in fact, Dr. Levine and I, in drafting this letter, talked about there's a Head Start program that rents space at the Welch School, and it's a program that's really necessary for that population. And because of these things that I'm talking about, without this project, without this 80-unit project, Dr. Levine is seriously considering not renewing the lease for the Head Start program next year because we need that additional space for K-5. So we have those concerns, and those are my minor concerns. My biggest concern is that we're now going to increase. We're going to put a structure, automobiles, and a whole lot of other stuff into a flood zone when the city has worked diligently to mitigate the flooding that takes place downtown, and we're just going to exacerbate the issue of flooding in the downtown area. The reason that that's a concern for us as a committee, a school committee, in relation to this project is when we flood in the square, we shut down school citywide. We shut down school citywide because we can't get buses safely from the high school down into Ward 3 or down into Ward 2, and we can't get kids to the middle school from Ward 2 and Ward 3. It's not fair to parents who don't send kids by buses to expect them to go through a flooded downtown to get their kids to and from school. It's not fair to our staff, teachers and paraprofessionals and specialists. We don't want to put them in that position, and historically, when the square floods, we shut down schools, so we lose school days. As you know, we're obligated to have 180 school days per year. As you also know, we're constricted with when we can have those school days based upon a collective bargaining agreement that was negotiated at arm's length and fairly, and been ratified by both the school committee and the various bargaining units. So for all of those reasons, and I hope I've outlined them within, and with Dr. Levine's, a tremendous amount of help from Dr. Levine. I want to thank you for all that publicly. I would ask, and I intend to make a motion, I think, Mr. Mayor, for the school committee to take a position with regard to the proposed project to put these, for the Larkin project, the Larkin group, in opposition to the proposal that's been put forward by the Larkin group for the development of, I think it's over 80 units. I think the 80 units were in the building itself, and then there were 8 separate townhouses. I could be wrong about that. And the plans, if you saw them or when you see them, have other issues beyond those. I mean, there's a 2-foot buffer between them and properties along Washington Street. There are whole other issues that go beyond the scope of what we, as a school department or school committee, will talk about. But anyway, so with that, I'd open it for discussion before I make a motion. I'd be happy to answer any questions that I can regarding this.
Great. Well, thank you again, Mr. Hartman. That was well done. Mr. Rossignol, then I'll come over to Mrs. Dunn and Mr. Olympia.
Thank you. This hasn't been sent to anybody yet, correct?
No.
No.
Okay.
Ms. Burnson has a copy of it.
So just to, Mr. Rosano, real quickly, so Mrs. Burnson from Community Development is the one compiling everything. She's gonna be making the submission. She's collecting all the letters and everything, so that's why it's addressed, but it's only been those couple people there.
Because I'd like a few things added. I'm pretty familiar with that area, and I'm pretty familiar with this project. It's actually gonna be 6 levels, I believe, and there's gonna be parking underneath. So not only will kids not,
boats.
right, exactly, instead of cars, they're gonna need boats actually to park. Because it does flood, it floods regularly, and it has since I was a kid. I know the police and the fire have issues with it because on 2 sides of the building, they're not even gonna be able to access. So a fire engine's not gonna be able to get around the building entirely like they have to for a school building. But with all of that said, I know another thing that they had mentioned at the meeting was that they're not expecting this building to house children, which I laugh at, and I kind of did the exact same thing that Ms. Dunn just did. Because when Cross Keys was built, they said the same thing. It's never going to house children. There are now 105 kids at Cross Keys. They said the same thing when Terrace Estates was built. Oh, it's not designed to house children. No, now there's 114 children there. Avalon Apartments. No. This is designed for the business community. It's not going to house children. There's at Cranbrook Way. There's 80 students there. So I want to make sure that that's incorporated into this. They might be well intended that they're not expecting children to be housed there. But in actuality, in every one of those cases, that was the same statement made before any one of those projects were taken on. And that's just been an added, and I don't want to say burden, but it was just an added I will say burden for lack of a better word, that was unexpected, and that's not warranted, and I just want that to be somehow formulated in this as well, is that this, and as Mr. Hockman so eloquently put, you know, you're adding school-age children to this building to an already overpopulated area, and that's going to be a real difficult thing to manage in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Rosen. Mrs. Dunn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Hoffman and Dr. Levine. This letter is right on point, and I'm really glad that it's before us, and I'm fully in support of submitting this on behalf of the school committee and the school department. Along the lines of what Mr. Rosenthal brought up, one of my issues is there's a sentence in here, it says, it's been our experience that multi-bedroom apartments are occupied, and it does follow with what you're saying. I would like to point out something in the very neighborhood that we're discussing. We did a survey, I can't remember how many years ago it was, and it was when I was still very heavily involved with the Welsh School, about the location of where students lived. On Foster Street, there are 3 complexes that remind me of this one, and no children were going to live in those. They're 1-bedroom apartments. Well, in some of those apartments, there are 4, 5, 7, and 8 children. They don't sleep in a bedroom. They sleep on the couch, or they sleep on the floor. There are many people in this district, in the Welsh School District, who are classified as homeless because they're living with families. And they're living with families in those very buildings that only have 1 bedroom. They might have 2 bedrooms, some of them. So the use of a 40B is abhorrent to me anyway, because in my mind it's an excuse for a developer to make money claiming altruistic reasons when there is no altruistic reason there, because they build warehouses for the poor. There are no amenities in these buildings. They put a building and a parking lot. They come to us and say no children will live there, and yet children do live there. There are all different types of human beings in that building. And I have written my own letter as a private citizen. I'm really glad we're doing this one. I didn't know we were going to, but I'm a resident of Ward 2, so I'm going to spout off on my own letter. My letter is going to bring up a little bit about the schools, but it's going to be more about the quality of life of these types of facilities being pushed onto cities who have done extensive planning to help the quality of life of the residents, and then you have someone who's going to come in and make a real quick buck and walk away, leaving a mess in their wake. And I mean wake, because people are gonna be leaving waves when they pull out of this spot. I can't count the number of cars we have that have gone under on water in that area, and that spot.
In that parking lot.
In that parking lot, exactly. And to put it in the most congested neighborhood raises all those questions about public safety, which I know other departments are going to bring up. They're putting it in the bottom of a bowl. That parking lot is the bottom of a bowl,
It really
where
is.
everything drains in there. And here we are, City Hall's been fighting for years, you're just getting your head above water, making Peabody Square a destination. You can see it in the neighborhoods, people fixing up their houses, and then they're gonna slap something like this 2 feet from the abutters and endanger the people who live in those houses. It just infuriates me, and my letter will go along those lines, but this one really speaks to the needs of the children who are gonna live in that building. So the one thing, back to my first statement about multi-bedroom apartments, I actually wonder if you want to take out, it's been our experience that apartments are occupied by school children, because people are doubling up, especially when they don't have any money. So that's just one rant. My other one is on paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. Mr. Livia?
Through the chair. Mr. Hockman, bravo. Dr. Levine, bravo. I'm in full support of this letter. I mean, as a former member of the Zoning Board of Appeals, my head's about to explode. Snow removal issues, water runoffs, buffers. I mean, it's just insane. And I think about the poor Welch School. And here we are struggling with redistricting, and what are we gonna do about that whole issue? And this is just, throwing compounding the problem. So full support of this, and great work to you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Livia. Mr. Amico?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the chair, to Dr. Levine and Mr. Hockman, thank you so much for putting this out. I have so many issues with this development here. Safety, and as an educator, my head's about to explode. I see 88 units. I see at least two students per unit, 2 children per unit, maybe 3. We're talking about 240. I don't even know if my math's right. 240 students. Presently, the center school has 400 students. That would be like adding a half a school to the city. I just don't know how we can do it. Not to mention all the safety issues. Excuse me. And it's not like they're proposing micro units that you see in Somerville or Cambridge that are attracting, techies or. I mean, this is for families. They're attracting. That was for you. They're trying to attract families, and when you attract families, you're going to have bigger families, and we really can't absorb 200 plus students in this city. We can't do that to our educators. We can't do that to our other students, and we can't just do that to our city. So thank you so much, and I agree with that.
Thank you, Mr. Amico. Mr. Rosio, briefly?
Just real quick, through the chair to the chairman. I know, like, you said that we're already at the 9%. Currently, we do not consider mobile homes as 40B, correct?
We are, you're required to have 10%. We are at about 9.5%. We
Right.
were over the 10% up until the last census. And what happened was the last census included the Brooksby Village properties and the properties and the homes on Dearborn Road. And what happened, that was about 2,000 units of housing that was brought on. At the time, the decision was made that those 2 developments did not include affordable housing. Those are 2,000 units that came on. That requires 200 residential units, and we're about 150 shy. So you can kind of figure out that's the reason why. Going forward now, we have an inclusionary zoning ordinance that requires any development of over 8 units, you're required to have 15% of that be affordable. So we have some mechanisms in place to assist with that, but since the census, we've been struggling to get to that 10%, and that allows projects like this to be proposed.
But currently, through the chair to you, currently our mobile home units do not,
Oh, I'm sorry.
are not considered.
Some mobile home units do count. There's certain criteria that has to be met. But there's many mobile homes that are not affordable because, you know, people don't qualify to be affordable. They just, you know, they want to live in mobile home parks. So they're not, just because they're a mobile home, that does not automatically mean that they're affordable.
Thank you.
Mr. Hockman?
On Mr. Rosignol's point, just on the mobile home parks on Route 1, and I understand that just because you live in a mobile home doesn't mean that you're below the poverty line, which I think is part of the criteria. But I think that they are undercounted. I think that they're to suggest that we, as a city, are under 10% of affordable housing. I would ask this developer and even the state agencies that are authorizing 40B housing to attend the McCarthy School and to talk to Mr. Smoyer about the students that attend the McCarthy School that are forced to do homework in closets in mobile home parks because they don't have adequate space in order to do homework in a quiet area because of where they live and their circumstances. So I agree with the sentiment that Mr. Rosignol has raised, that we do satisfy 40B criteria as a city. I know that goes beyond the scope of what we're talking about, but just to address a few points that were raised by my colleagues tonight. Ms. Dunn, I did ask the developer if they, what other sites in the city they looked at in order to put this development that they proposed. And their response to me was offensive. They, in an open meeting, said that they had no obligation under the statute to exhaust any other sites. That they proposed, this proposal stood on its own for this site. And I couldn't agree with you more, that this is the wrong spot for this type of development. There may be other places in the city, and I don't want to, pit one neighborhood against the other, because that's not my style, and it's certainly nothing I'm going to do. But this is a project that just doesn't belong in that spot. It is a bowl. It floods. Everybody in the room knew it flooded. The developer knew it flooded. There was no, I'm a former member of the Conservation Commission. I looked at snow removal. I looked at they're not going to be able to store snow on that property. There's going to be, in order conditions from the Conservation Commission would require them to remove snow from their property. They still have to comply with DEP regs, but they don't have to comply with local ordinances. I don't know who from the DEP is going to be monitoring snow removal or snow storage on that property. They would have to provide for compensatory rain storage, because they're going to have to level off the property in order to put cars and buildings on it at some point. I don't know where that compensatory rainwater storage is going to take place. And on top of that, and talking about circumventing local ordinances, as the mayor started off, the city of Peabody has an ordinance that says you cannot build in a flood zone. You're prohibited from building in a flood zone, and
Because that just makes sense.
yeah, and by
Sorry.
exercising the rights under Chapter 40B, the developer gets to circumvent that, and it doesn't make sense. It just, we asked them, at the meeting, someone asked about a green roof that might be able to absorb some of the rainwater and mitigate some of the flooding that takes place, and they openly said that there was no plan in this project for a green roof. And then lastly, on these points, on the 40B calculation, I believe, and I may be wrong, but I believe that the Tannery 1 building had been had qualified under 40B and counted towards 40B classification for the city, and recently went offline under 40B. And I'm not that familiar with the statute, but it almost seems as if, as Ms. Dunn said, that a developer comes in and leaves, although they said that they were going to rent these units, not sell them, and they were going to have a management team. We know it's going to move hands a few times, and there's going to be money made. And I'm not opposed to developers making money, just not this way. But it almost seems that under 40B, you get the benefit of the statute, the protections of the statute, by circumventing laws that make sense, that we as a local municipality enact because it's what's good for our people. And then, there's a period of time in which they need to comply with certain regulations, and then they can elect to go full market rent. And now we're stuck with a building 10 years later, and this developer has decided that they're gonna elect full market rent so that they can make more money and have people living, you know, in peril, in absolute peril.
Mr. Rosignol, briefly, then Mr. Miko.
Are the Elks still in litigation with this developer?
There's some confusion as to where the lawsuit stands right now. There hasn't been a closing. It's still in purchase and sale agreement stage. However, they felt that they had sufficient legal grounds to move forward with the application. So I don't know where the litigation stands.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Miko?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through the chair to just the committee. Another thing, I mean, this is just a money grab. This is, this developer is just being careless. They know it floods. They just want to build something there. They're just looking for profit. They're not looking for anything else. The other safety issue is how about police and fire? I mean, if that area is flooded and God forbid there's a fire in that complex, I mean, I wouldn't feel comfortable sending people in there. But they would go in there because that's what they do. And this is just, from start to finish, this is just a bad idea. Thank you.
Mrs. Dunn?
I'll ask two other questions. You two fellows might know, put this on the site before the Elks. Were there any factories there?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Well, this is Peabody. Pray for chromium. Seriously, they wouldn't be able to build on it. The other question is, or a statement, the Elks have always been such good neighbors. That is an incredibly congested neighborhood. In the winter, the neighbors park at the Elks to get the cars off the road. Weekly, the people who go to the temple park at the Elks. People who are going to go to Peabody Square or who live facing the square park in the Elks. If that is taken away, that neighborhood is going to be under even more pressure as far as where are people going to park their vehicles during storms or even on regular events. And that actually does impact the safety of the current students who live in that neighborhood, because they have to walk through there. And it really is a very dangerous spot. There are a lot of factories down there, and the little kids do walk. They walk to the Welch, they walk to the Higgins, they walk to school buses for the high school, and they walk to St. John's School. It has a great impact on a lot of our school-age children in this city. So,
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. Mr. Ackman, to make a motion?
Yes, if I may, I'd like to make a motion that the school committee adopt the position as stated in the letter that's before you.
second.
Further motion by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mrs. Dunn. On the motion, Mr. Rosignol?
On the end of that document, are there going to be spots for all of us to sign?
I didn't know how to do it. I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, I think that would be beneficial.
And if you can just authorize Marjorie or Dr. Levine to sign your name, it needs to be submitted by tomorrow, from what I understand.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to, if I may, I know you mentioned and you had the chart of. how-
Yeah, I'd almost
You
like
wanna
that.
Addendum.
Yeah, I would, yeah, just as, exactly.
I would just attach it to the letter if that's okay. as an
Perfect.
addendum.
That'd be great.
Good. Excellent.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hockman?
Yes.
Mr. Rosenbaum?
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mrs. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Olympia?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So, items for the next agenda will be handled in the regular course. Mr. Rosignol?
Just two items I'd like on the next agenda. I'm thinking possible move of our meetings to someplace that can go live. So maybe going back to City Hall until the discussions with Comcast are resolved. And then maybe before our next meeting, having an executive session on calendar issues.
Okay, we'll put that on to the agenda. Next meeting, we have the organizational meeting, which will be January 3rd, 2017. Is that right, January 3rd? I gotta check that date. That doesn't sound.
Yeah, it
It
came
was the
in,
second.
No, it's the January
No, it's-
2nd is the reorganization meeting and the midterm address at City Hall.
on a
January-
Monday?
It's a Monday night,
Monday.
7 o'clock.
Yeah, because it's posted on the 3rd.
I think
Yeah.
it should be the 10th.
And then the 10th is our first regular meeting.
So are we gonna organize on,
We generally organize that
Second.
first.
we organize at our first meeting and
On
we,
off years.
on off years, this is our off year.
So it should be the 10th.
So for us,
Okay.
it'd be the 10th.
I will be honest though, just through the chair, we probably should organize it the second, because we have to keep an eye on the mayor as far as drawing numbers.
That's right.
Yeah, so we should do it.
Motion to adjourn.
Randy,
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
thanks, Pat.